afternoon. This is Tech News. I am Dr. Maximiliano Sepulveda, and this is Dr. Juan Pablo Fernandez. And we'll be talking about the decolonization of Palestine. Dr. Juan Pablo, will you please explain to us the context of the whole decolonization process, please?
Of course. So we shall start first talking about that after World War One, the right now Palestine was former Ottoman Empire. It was part of the vilayettes of Beirut and Jerusalem, and they were assigned it to Great Britain by the United Nations as a form of protectorate called mandate. This was based on the Article 22 of the Covenant of the League of Nations, which stated that Great Britain had the rule over these territories until they could stand on their own. So this entire region by 1922 was then officially known as the Mandatory of Palestine. This was under British control, and this territory was split into parts: the nowadays Jordan, and Palestine was the other half. So, talking about the context, but by 1917, Zionist ideals were spreading already around the globe, and the British Empire was actually very close to the Zionist thinking, and they promised the Jews international community that they will create a Jewish state within the borders of Palestine, which was their homeland. In their ideology, as the Jewish religion states, Palestine should be the homeland of the Jews. So they started with some immigration policies where they tell the Jews to move into Palestine, and they started to do so. And then the Arab community that was living there and was established in the region long before the mandate started to complain. Right? They started to complain because the British government had some laws, like for example this one, that they just allowed the Jews to be the landowners in Palestine in the mandate. So this resulted in a rebellion on part of the Palestinian Arabs known as the Nevi Musa riot. So with this civil war and after that, tensions just keep growing up, and as the Jewish population that migrated to Palestine was growing too. And then another side, when Hitler proclaimed the Nazi Germany, the concerns about the European Jews were growing. So the immigration to Palestine reached higher levels because the European Jews were moving outside of Europe, and they started to get into Palestine. And then we had another revolt by the Palestinians. It was a 3-year civil war between 1936 and 39. It was led by Haj Amin al-Husseini. So the British Empire created a committee to solve the issue. This policy was known as the White Paper, and it says that it urged the government to limit the Jewish migration into Palestine, and that was the response of the Palestinians. They wanted to have a government led by Palestinians and to favor them. And so a territorial division was proposed for the first time. This is when Arab leader Amin al-Husseini flew to Germany and interviewed Adolf Hitler. And they talk about really expanding the Jewish extermination because both Germans and Palestinian Arabs were against the Jewish. So I think that's all about the context. Then I think Dr. Sepulveda could talk some more about the actual decolonization process.
Thank you very much, Dr. Juan Pablo Fernandez. So, having completed the context behind the decolonization, I will actually explain the process. So, between 1939 and 1947, then, Zionist groups committed several terrorist hits against the British authorities because of their disapproval on the White Paper, killing with this, besides lots of civilians, their last chance to be backed up by Great Britain. These several hits on the empire made Prime Minister Churchill to ask the United Nations for the end of the mandate. The mandate was about to be over. The exact date was May 15th, 1948, when the British mandate over Palestine was finally declared finished. Exactly 1 year before the expiration date, the United Nations created the UNSCOP in order to deliberate about further Palestinian destiny. In 1947, as well, the UN General Assembly approved Resolution 181, which settled the territorial limits for two new states, one Arab and another Jewish. This resolution was rejected by Arab states and eventually provoked the insurrection of Arab Palestinians, who brought again civil war to the Mandate of Palestine, this time from November 30th, 1947 until May 14th, 1948. The same day the civil war ended, Britain took their last troops off Palestinian territory. Finally, the end of the Mandate of Palestine had arrived. That very same day, David Ben-Gurion proclaimed the independence of Israel on Tel Aviv. And the day after that, 5 members of the Arab League, under the command of Abdul Rahman Hassan, merged with Palestinian forces and in the days after invaded the newly created Israel state, beginning the Arab-Israeli War. Israel's belligerent power was seen as superior as the war developed, way ahead the decadent situation on which the Palestinians were. So this, after months of fighting, the final outcome were 600,000 Palestinians forced to move from within the borders of New Israel and periphery zones seized by Israel's army. This was known as a Palestinian exodus. After the virtual defeat of Arab Palestine, Abdullah was suspected to be developing private bilateral negotiations with the Jews. This caused tension among the members of the Arab League, and so the Hashemite king of Jordan invaded the West Bank and took control over the east part of Palestine. Arab Palestine sought protection under an Egyptian protectorate, which made the Gaza Strip the main administrative center of the newly created All-Palestine government, which continued its existence until 1959, when Egypt formally declared the All-Palestine government was not able to succeed in behalf of the interests of the Arab Palestinian and merged into the United Arab Republic. Now, Juan Pablo Fernandez, would you explain to us the main ideology behind the whole decolonization process, please?
Of course, because it is very important to learn, to know about the philosophy behind every movement and a decolonization process is very important to be aware of what's behind the minds of the actors,
of course,
of the conflict. So, in the side of the Arabs, right?
Of course,
the philosophy was known as jihad or sacred war, and then their intention is to expand their ideology in the name of God. So this is a way to ensure and preserve their own religion and modus vivendi, and this is actually kind of contradictory of what the League of Nations proposed about the self-determination of the peoples, because the Arabs of Palestine, they wanted to live with this jihad ideology behind. They wanted to preserve their modus vivendi, and a Jewish ideology was imposed, right? So this is kind of contradictory, but that's what happened. And then in the side of the Jews, well, the philosophy could be called it's known as Zionism, which is an international political movement which its main objective is Israel, and it talks about the Jewish homeland, right? Because it supports the Jews upholding their Jewish identity with is completely identified with the state of Israel, and it opposes to assimilation of Jews into other societies. So they want to live in Israel. They want to live only with Jews, and that's what the ideology behind the Jews is.
Okay, I think it's also important to mention that the British government, in this instance after the end of World War II, obviously they were not as strong as they were before World War I, and it's also important to mention that with the United States being the power now, Great Britain was forced to let go of its colonies and its mandates, including Palestine. So there was a sense of self-determination of the peoples. That was kind of the ideology behind this whole leaving the mandate of Palestine also. I think that's also important to mention. Am I right?
Of course, yeah, that's what actually happened, and it's good to have this decolonization process all over the world, and principally on the British Empire.
Anything else you want to add?
Well, I think, uh, well, yes, we should add the international interests that were stake
The
over there.
geopolitical context. Am I right?
Of course, of
Okay.
course, and yeah, this is about the Great Britain was relaying its own power to solve the situation of the mandate, and after the initial waves of Jewish immigration, when clashes started to appear, Great Britain was confident about the destiny of its protectorate. So then, when jihadist battles started to fulfill the national affairs, Great Britain was so in trouble. Arabs were so many that was the main issue. Um, and that about the interests of Great Britain. And
Okay, I would also like to add that also in this geopolitical context, the constantly growing Arab nationalism represented a major part of the territories that were in dispute. Also, the rising of Arab militias, and groups of insurrection among population in Palestine. The support Arab Palestinians got from the Arab League and the rapidly within they acted as a great military coalition. The constant clashes between Jews and Palestinians produced on a great spend on the part of the British. This and the terrorist hits that shocked the mandate after the events of 1939 were all as part of the geopolitical context during the decolonization project process. Anything else you want to add?
well, I think that will be all concerning the decolonization of Palestine, and
I
we
agree.
covered the most important points. And yes, we're done with this presentation of this very interesting topic. Well, thank you, Dr. Sepulveda, for inviting me to
Thank
the
you,
program.
Dr. Juan Pablo Fernandez, and thank you for tuning in this podcast of Tech News. We'll see you later.